self-sufficiency, self-reliance, homesteading, and you. Hey everybody, this is Michael with Asymmetrical Preparedness. In this video, we got a special guest, Mr. K. Walk around his homestead, talk about some stuff, show you some B-roll footage of his cows, his turkeys, chickens, ducks, pheasants, all these things. Setting up a new garden area also, building an awesome homestead. So let's get to it. But before we get into the video, I'd like to mention the fact that I started a Give, Send, Go account at the behest of subscribers like you that emailed me and asked me to please set one up to help with my wife's medical, dental, all the expenses, all the costs, stuff like that. Yes, we have medical insurance, but anything homeopathic, anything outside their comfort zone, we have military health system. So you know how that is. And dental sucks, and we're very tight. So I did start it. I will put the link on the screen and in the description if you feel so inclined to give. There's also a place on there you can go there and pray, place of prayer. Give, Send, Go is a conservative / faith-based alternative to GoFundMe. We all know what happened with them. So if you feel so inclined, it would make a huge difference and it would be a true blessing to us. But no pressure. I love you guys just the same no matter what. Prayers are actually more important. Thanks. All right, so here we are. This is Mr. K. This is his homestead, and I'm gonna let him talk a little bit about it. I guess you start off with getting into why he homesteads, why he feels this is important, especially in today's times, and the whole concept of self-sufficiency.
All right, well, welcome you guys. We live on a little 5-acre farm here. We really utilize about 3.5 acres of it. But we started doing this, gosh, years ago before backyard chickens were even popular. We started it because we wanted to make sure that the things we're putting in our body, whether it was a meat or whether it was vegetables from our garden, were as high quality as we could make them. We have some dietary needs that are between my wife and my daughter that are very strict on what things we're allowed to, they're able to have. And that was our first focus. You know, it wasn't really even in the preparedness mindset as much as it was personal health. Since then, we've gotten into the idea of living more off the land that we have. We keep expanding. It seems like every year we're doing another project. We're to the point now where we produce 100% of our protein, whether that's chicken for like the stew pot or eggs. We also do pheasant, we do quail. This last year we got into turkeys. We do a lot of ground turkey, and so that's been really successful. And we've done cattle and pigs. The last couple of years we've gotten away from the swine, and we've done more of just the beefs. We have bought drop calves and done them that way. And then this last season we finally got to a point where we can have a bull on the property, which will impregnate our cattle, and that's our future freezer beef, right? So we've kind of gone full circle on that with our reading and our really going through and talking to other farmers. We've been able to really prepare an environment where, you know, as long as we can grow grass, we can grow the beef, and they'll make the manure, and the manure will help for our garden space. And it seems like every year we just keep expanding.
That's a really good point. A lot of people think single-faceted, where they may have a garden or they may have animals, but they don't really work it into a sustainable homestead where it's like creating its own ecosystem, where you use the manure from the cows and the chickens and stuff like that to compost the garden, and any extra from the garden you can use to feed the animals, etc. That's an awesome idea. I love what you guys are doing here.
You know, it's not mine, it's stolen, right? I mean, it's stuff that you apply, and I think that's probably one of the most important things that I would say is don't ever be afraid to continue learning, right? There's some really, really good farms out there. The internet has just been amazing because I guess it was even maybe 15 years ago, you were pulling out books, right? You're pulling out books in order to try and make that knowledge happen. Now, the beauty of some of the platforms out there that can help you with knowledge and just people being willing to share their experiences is dynamic. I think one of the best programs I watched, I ended up ordering the book. The book is just identical to the program I watched. I probably could just watch the whole thing on television, not spend 25 bucks, but it talks about growing grass. And if you're a meat eater like we are, you don't actually have to be good at anything but growing grass. And if you can grow grass, you can get some type of ruminant animal to eat that grass. And from that, you can do everything without having to supplement anything. And it depends how many animals you can have based on how much space you have. If you only have enough room for one animal, well then you only have enough room for one animal. That one animal can still produce enough manures to help your garden space grow, and you can replenish your own minerals in your own soil that way. To kind of go through some of those classes is pretty awesome.
All right, so with all that said, what animal do you think is the best bang for the buck? Or that you would suggest maybe somebody starting off with for somebody who wants to get into this?
Well, the cheapest, easiest is chickens, right? Chickens, you can find a good all breed where they do meat or eggs. There's some really beautiful chickens out there that you can spend a whole bunch of money on, or you can just get your old-fashioned barnyard mix from anyone who's ever laid eggs that got ready for birth, a new one. Chickens are easy. The difficulty people have with chickens is buying feed, and this is something that economy of scale, you have to really look at how many chickens do I really need? And a family of 4 really needs 5 or 6 chickens max. And that's if you eat eggs every single day, because most of the season, they're gonna each produce an egg, not quite every day, but it's like every 28 or 30 hours. So you might get 6 eggs on one day from 6 chickens, but most likely you'll get 4. Well, most people don't actually eat 4 eggs every single day, and if you do, maybe you need to ramp up. The difficulty on that is when people get to commercial grains and feed. I know for us, we are just to the point where we have enough going on our property where our chickens don't really have to eat a lot of feed. It wasn't until like the mid-40s when we even had a commercial feed. Most farmers, I mean, you go back to the Great Depression, man, they didn't have feeds to feed their chickens. Their chickens cleaned up the scraps, right? It was everything you didn't eat at the dinner table. It was part of the compost bin. They went and scratched into their job, and some of the greatest farms out there have their chickens that follow their other animals. Their animals crap, and then, can I say that? Their animals poop, beep, their animals poop, yeah. And then there's fly larvae, right? And then the chickens come along and they scratch that out and they eat that protein. And between that and the bugs they find on the ground, there's a lot of great programs out there where if you balance the right amount of poultry to your farm, you never have to feed your chickens. And they grow and they just give eggs like natural normally, and that's not a huge expense. We get so used to just going and buying that bag and giving it to them in a feeder because we confine them to a small amount of space. If you can get your chickens to roam, you rarely, except for cold months, stuff like that, where you want to give them a little extra energy, right, have to do that. And I would say pound for pound, chickens produce by far the most. Outside of that, if you have a little bit of property, depending on how much space you have, cattle are fantastic. If you do swine are fantastic. They're just as happy in a 10 by 10 piece of concrete with water and food as they are if they have an acre to roam and root. They really are an amazing animal. But you got to remember that pigs were kind of designed to be the garbage disposal of your farm. I know there's quite a few people that don't eat pork. We're getting away from a lot of our porks. They're a cleaner animal, I think, than they used to be, but there's some biblical reasons not to get into swine, and that's, everybody's comfort zone. But the idea is that they're a garbage disposal, and at some point during the year, you're done with all the extra things that you cut off your vegetables, your garden space that you don't consume, the stuff that's wilted maybe, and you'll feed it to your pig. Well, at some point, you don't have any of that left over, and that's when you take the pig to butcher, right? You don't just feed a pig all winter just to have a pig. We're just getting into this next year. We might go into sheep. If you eat lamb, sheep are an amazing producer. They almost always lay twins, almost always have one male and one female, and that's a huge benefit for reproducing your herd. Very, very healthy meat. And as far as the effect they have on your land, it's quite a bit less. Like, we can show you some pictures of we have kind of a sacrificial area where our cattle are, where they've just knocked it down to mud, and you keep kind of scraping that mud out during the rain season, right? Well, sheep don't really do that to the ground. They're so much lighter. Their foot space compared to what they eat and consume is quite a bit easier on your property. So there's a lot of different options out there. Say start with chickens. You can get into sheep. They're pretty amazing. Your $1 per meat pound beef is pretty darn good. You gotta have the space for it.
That's good. I like the points you made about the chickens, is roaming for the food because they are healthier. Their eggs are healthier. The food you eat from them is healthier, and it's less expensive, and it's more sustainable. You grid down a big SHTF scenario, some long-term event, you're not gonna be able to go to the grain store to get this stuff. So like Mr. K was talking about, having ways to feed your animals on your farm, on your homestead. That's the best way to go about it. And like he also said, you need to analyze and look at like how much property you got, what your conditions are and stuff like that. Do your own research. And YouTube, is awesome for that. There's tons of good homesteading channels about raising animals, just plethora of information and knowledge out there. The thing is, you actually have to get out and do. And another point I was thinking of when Mr. K was talking here was tribe. We talk about tribe all the time. We don't get to spend as much time together as we'd like because he's really busy. I got stuff going on. I got to take care of my wife and do all the things there. But we're right there. Like he said, he produces 100% of his own meat calories. Well, we have a huge garden. So what happens if he needs vegetables or we need meat? We can barter, we can trade, we can be there for each other. We can't be alone. We're not an island, you know, we can't do this alone. They do have a garden space. They're working on making a much larger garden space, so eventually he'll be there. But in the interim, we can help them and they can help us, and that's what was great about Tribe, as well as all the other skill sets. He knows how to weld, he knows how to fabricate stuff, he knows how to work on vehicles, he knows a lot of different skills that maybe I don't. And there's skills that I have that maybe he's a little bit weaker in, and we can work off each other and support each other that way. That's why I talk about Tribe all the time. It's really important. It's one of those things that you gotta do.
There's a lot of different words you can call your team. You can call them a tribe, you can call them a MAG, a mutual assistance group. The idea is that you have these relationships built before you need them. And that's kind of difficult sometimes, right? To get on the same page with people. For us, if tomorrow we had a grid down, if life just changed for us tomorrow, a lot of the animals that we have on the farm kind of can take care of themselves, right? I mean, we might be bucketing water rather than the plumbing running, right? We may not have the hot wire going.
Yeah.
If your situation, let's say you have 20 chickens. Let's say you sell eggs and whatever. You get a ton of eggs, you sell them out for a couple of bucks, whatever, a dozen. If you are in a scenario where if tomorrow you couldn't get your feeds, your option is to eat the chickens, let them go free, or try and barter and trade them. But to really think about that in your assistance group, you have a mutual assistance group where you can trade those chickens to someone who maybe has a good garden going, they got a ton of potato planted or whatever's going on. You can then kind of take that walking freezer of food and exchange that. And maybe that's what you would need to do, and that needs to be part of your plan. And maybe you talk to your team and your friends, you say, hey, I'll continue to raise this many chickens, but if we have this potential situation where we're not gonna get those feeds anymore, I got 10 extra. What do you got in cold storage? And then they can take those, and maybe they have a yard where they can free range 5 or 6 of them. There's enough feed for those there. You gotta look at what you have, what you could take care of, because sometimes what you're hoping for and running isn't really sustainable on your own piece. That's a hard conversation to have. Sometimes it's nice to have somebody come and look at your farm. We've done that for a couple of friends' farms where we've come and seen the space they had set up for pigs, or we've had their space set up for, you know, they got turkeys or chickens or sheep or whatever, right? And you can go, hey, you know what? I don't really think that's enough space for how many you're trying to grow. And then you got to have that conversation of, why are you trying to raise this many? Do you have a huge family? No. It's for everybody else? Well, why don't you just teach them how to do it on their property, and then it's not an issue.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think people tend to overestimate. When I was looking at getting into chickens, I was way overestimating how many I actually need also. You also got to mind, if you're just using them for eggs, or if you're using them as meat birds also, then you may want to have more if you want the meat as well as the eggs. Yeah, that's a really good point. And another thing about having mutual assistance groups is not everybody is living on property that is sustainable and or defensible or in the best situation. We have people in our group that live in town, in a neighborhood. Where I live, my house, as nice as some of the stuff is we have, my garden and stuff like that, it really isn't defensible. Most people's houses, properties, the way they're built in the United States, are not defensible. And the whole thing, fixed fortifications are a tribute to man's stupidity, that is true, but we all have to have somewhere to live. So really, if it was a bad situation, I mean, really, really bad, and there was a lot of threats out there, your group would need to gather somewhere. So you would try to pick the most sustainable and defensible property that there is. Mr. K's property here is way more defensible, sustainable, larger than my property. So if it was going really to heck, I'd probably have to get my family, we'd probably have to come here.
We'd go on the good old, what's that?
Yeah.
Bring your stuff. Right?
Yeah.
Don't forget your freezer.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't bring my garden with me, but I have a massive seed storage. I have my own personal seed vault. I mean, I don't even know how many, hundreds of thousands of seeds of all different varieties. You see all this property around here, the property goes back in there and stuff like that. He may not have a garden planted right now, but shoot, he has so much ground here that can be turned into a garden like that. I mean, there's this whole front yard that could be turned, you know, just plowed under really quick with his excavator, which is another thing. If you're gonna have a homestead, you may want to think about things like that, having an excavator. You know, I think in terms of hand tools. That's why it's nice to talk with and to interface with people like him and other people in our group where they're into like heavy machinery and stuff like that. They look at a place like he has this area here. Actually, let me turn the camera over here so you guys can kind of see. It's fallen off down into the gully here. And so he is in the process of backfilling it right there with dirt. That's something that because he has an excavator, he can do. I can't do stuff like that. So that's another thing about having a variety of skill sets with different people in your group. That's another reason why it's vital.
And you had touched on, bringing your seed vault. If you're watching this channel, then you're obviously in a similar mindset where your thought pattern is, okay, what if some moment of life changes my ability to go to the grocery store or my security in my residence? I'm hoping that each of you have your stored foods for the immediate emergency, whether that's 1 week, 3 weeks, 1 year. That's up to you and your situation. I hope it's more than less. The recoup rate, the ability to put stuff back in and not just use from your storage is the only way to get that mindset of security. Sometimes it's knowledge base and capability, and sometimes it's physical products. So to have mutual assistance group members who are really good at looking at a dirt and a soil, picking it up, smelling it like the old school, we need some more nitrogen. To have that skill set of someone who's done it over and over and over, that is a huge value. Because someone can come up and say, hey, this is what we need in your soil for it to truly produce. And to drop those seeds in and see them flourish, because you can eat off your stored foods for so long. And at some point, you got to produce. And especially if you're a situation where you expect and anticipate your loved ones to come and join you in those times of need. The idea is you can't all eat off the food that I've stored. And likely, if someone's coming to you to have a safer environment, they're not able to bring everything in that time. Hopefully, but probably not. Most of us don't have a spare enclosed trailer stocked full of a year's worth of food for a family of 10. And they could just drag with them and not all their other stuff. The ability and knowledge base and the exercise practice of actually growing the food is huge. Whether that's animals, chickens, cattle, whatever, or if it's a knowledge base of seeds and actually cultivating, how much water it takes, how to set that up for efficiency is really, really important. I know that you have done a lot of raised bed type work, and you've gone from hand watering everything to a drip system.
Well, that was in the works.
That was in the works.
I don't have that yet.
Right. And so
it's still hand watering.
The knowledge base of, okay, I as a person have to put in this many hours of bucketing or hand watering with a hose for this size of garden space, right? People sometimes get stuck and then all of a sudden half their crops go to waste because they aren't able to do it all by hand. And,
it's a lot of work.
And that's a conversation that you have to have when you're starting that type of a plan. And if you're kind of a grid down, limited scenario, it's vital because you might be talking about, honest to God, carrying buckets. Right?
Yeah,
which
watering
is a big difference.
Would become a lot more difficult then. But yeah, like Mr. K here said, having people that are, can sniff the soil and tell you stuff, that's why you gotta do it. I've been doing it, I'd say solidly gardening for 4, maybe 5 years now, and I'm not even close to there. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a master gardener or anything like that. I learn every year, but if you're not doing it, you're never gonna learn. And just having a survival seed vault, which look into that, there's probably not the best idea to have. There's a lot better seeds out there also. Just having seeds set aside and say, oh, I'll garden when SHTF happens, or I'll go down and get a chick and raise chickens. No, that ain't gonna happen. I can tell you that with animals, I can tell you that with gardening. Yeah,
you're gonna end up with some loss. I would say the other thing that's vital is if this is exciting to you, if this is an idea you want, and you want to look at this self-reproducing, I don't even know what the word is, but putting food back on the shelf without going to the grocery store.
Yeah, like restocking.
Restocking, there you go. So this is self-restocking. You have to also understand how to get it from the ground to a stable situation where it doesn't go bad in a day. That's really important, like potatoes and carrots. I mean, if you didn't know, you weren't supposed to wash them off. You're not supposed to wash them off, right? They last a lot longer with a little bit of dirt on them, right? So, and how you bed them in wood chips or however that system is so that they can stay. Otherwise, they go bad real fast. Same thing with meats. If you don't know how to process. You're actually gonna not just collect the egg, but process the chicken or the turkey, and then turn it into something you can eat, and how to do it cleanly in an environment where you don't have a ton of running water or whatever. There are so many opportunities to learn that. And cattle or butchery, if you're actually doing the slaughter on site, and then cutting those cuts, and which part of that animal are better stewed than they are a steak, or should just be ground. There's so much information right now, and the beauty of us having the tool sets we have with our grid system. You can learn more in a week right now with all the online programs than you ever could have learned in any other time in history, and that's free to you. And so grasp onto those, and then if you have a chance and you have a local farm or homestead around you that's processing chickens or processing swine or processing beef or something, you hear something, reach out and do it, because even if you're watching some guy do it or some gal do it, you see them reach into a carcass and cut a something and pull it out rather than trying to watch it, but you can't see it on a video. You got to be able to go tug this and pull this hard.
And get hands on.
Hands on. And
do it.
And anybody who's done it knows the value of it. I'm telling you, even if it's as much as hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, something like that, it's the same idea. Get involved in those things if this is something you want.
Good point. I mean, I've hunted a lot. I can process animals, no problem. But I can't do it like he can. I have no idea. I mean, I could skin a cow, I could gut it, I could process it all, I could cut up all the meat and eat it and provide food for my family. I have no idea what steaks or what cuts come from where on a cow. I have no idea. So can I make it work? Sure, of course. And that is what I would recommend you at least have that base knowledge of, yes, I actually physically have the ability, I can turn that cow into food for my family. But if you want to go a step further,
make it taste right.
Exactly.
Enjoy it. Right?
Exactly.
Enjoy it. You know, it's funny, we did during the stay home, so we had our stay home here, which was quite a few days. We were like, hey, we got this stuff. We've been preparing for this for a long time. Let's see how well we can do this. Are we good at this or poor at this? And I'll be honest with you, we weren't very good at it. We were able to stay home. We were able to eat, but we had a lot of things that didn't go together. We busted into some of those like 25 or 30-year shelf life things. And we realized that at the time, we didn't have any of the binding things. We had tons of noodles, we had tons of stuff, but we didn't have any sauces. We definitely didn't have enough salts and peppers for the meals we were making at home. At the time, we were grinding our own wheat berries and making our own flour, except we didn't have butter. We didn't have milk. We didn't have the leveling thing, the things that actually make that a tasty product. So to kind of go through that and practice those things and see where are my losses and how can I set my system up so either I don't need those or I have enough of those stored. For us now, there's plenty of pounds of pepper and pounds of salt. And when you really don't have it in your foods that are so already prepared, you realize you go through a lot more of it. I know you guys probably have a cash and carry at Costco, those size of things of pepper, black pepper crush. If you don't eat anything, but you're cooking it all at your own home, you'll be surprised. You go through that a month. It's not like a year-long supply anymore when it doesn't come kind of pre-seasoned. And oregano, we didn't know we would go through that much oregano in our life, but we go through one of those every couple of weeks. If we're doing our own spaghetti sauce, you're doing a lot of seasonings, and the amount of raw seasonings you use is huge. And so I know that's one of our biggest things here. We're expanding our garden, and we're having a whole section of our garden which is just to produce those seasonings that we can grow locally here, right? We'll just buy a 5-gallon bucket of black pepper and be happy.
That's like us. We probably have literally about 100 pounds of garlic powder. And that may last us a couple of years, maybe.
But if you're using it on every single meal you make, you'll be surprised the difference of that bland flavor towards your seasoned flavor. You're trying to be in a situation where everything changes and life stays the same. And the more you can make life stay the same, the more efficient you're going to be, the more productive you're going to be, and then the happier family you're going to end up being with you and your tribe. It's that maybe that just means you have one person designated being the awesome cook, and you you put this piece of meat on the table, and they learn how, and they know how to cook it. And if that's a skill set you don't quite have, that's really important. Yeah,
I'd like to roll back also to a point we hit a little bit ago was food storage. You got to have it. We know that. That's a given. Once you open that first can of your food storage, you're starting that stopwatch in your life. How long do you want to live? That's why Mr. K here was talking about restocking, self-reliance, self-sufficiency. That's why all this stuff, the homesteading stuff, is so important, because what he would like to do, I assume, what I would like to do is provide all the food we need for our families in any situation, and then only open up selected stuff as needed so that that 1 year of food storage that you have lasts 5 years or 10 years, because you're not actually using it all the time. that's the best place to be right there.
And I would say the ability to upscale without upscaling before you're ready for it or need it. That's the big thing for us. We have 5 head of cattle, and we have a bull, and we have cows, and so guess what? They make babies, which is awesome. Now that's every 2 years we really get to butcher one of those out. But the ability to throw an extra steer on there is huge. The ability to have your garden space maybe set up with your watering system so that in case you had to ramp up, and let's say something happened, and let's say your family went from a family of 5 to a family of 15 because all your buddies, your family, your friend, your people you love needed that assistance, and they came to you for that. Well, now can that family of 15 operate on that same garden space, or is your system set up so that you can simply expand it and that will carry you through, you know, this is another growing season? That ability is pretty important.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think we've talked about a lot of different stuff here. I'll give Mr. K here the opportunity to recap a little bit really quick before we end the video. Is there anything you'd like to recap, cover, emphasize?
Yeah, I would say we talked about MAG, a mutual assistance group, or your team, or your family. One of the things that we've tried, which has taken a lot of weight off of us, is making sure that the other people that we love are also capable. There's no way that you can prepare enough for everyone else's family. So the idea is that regardless of the scenario, whether it's an earthquake or whatever, it doesn't even matter, right? If you can help somebody else be prepared for that, that's the best insurance you can have. And then your contingency is the location you're at, one that you need to invest your time and effort in, to where that's your oasis. That's the emergency. If you're in your life want to be less reliant on some of the systems out there, that's a little separate. It's a little different. And so you can produce quite a bit of your own foods, which I believe can be quite healthy, much healthier, give you more nutrients than maybe what you get at the produce stand or at your grocery store. And that's huge. That's in your hope. If you aren't sure about the property you have somebody you trust come and help you evaluate it. Look at it and say, yeah, you have what you need here. Or maybe it's time to look at a different location because this doesn't really put you in a position to live like you want to live. You know, and having those hard conversations sometimes is really important because you can put a lot of effort into a piece of property, day after day after day, year after year, building up a system that isn't actually going to work. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've changed fences, for instance. Depending on what type of animal you want, it's a different fence. The difficulty of changing a fence that you already think kind of works, but your animals always get out, that's so frustrating. For us, if we would have had someone come and say, oh, you want cattle? Don't do this type of fence. Oh, you want goats? Don't do this type of fence. They're just going to beat it up, or they're just going to get out, or pigs, or whatever. And there's things that people have learned by experience that I would take advantage of. You're only doing it once. If it's worth doing right, it's worth, you know, it's worth doing once, it's worth doing right. And asking people who live with it every single day, it can really help you in your adventure too.
Last thing I'd like to cover is, like you said, was your tribe, your mutual assistance group, empowering them and really working with them to get on board with being prepared so that there isn't this huge discrepancy in your level of preparedness. Because you don't want, you know, this super prepper up here and then like all these people that aren't prepped at all, because then that super prepper stuff won't last as long once all these people show up and you gather. In this situation, you know, I would bring my seed vault, but that's not all I'm bringing. He would have to bring his flatbed, his 1-ton truck, my 1-ton truck, and probably make 2 or 3 trips to bring all my food storage here. So,
which is the thing, right? It's like, you're welcome, just don't come empty-handed.
Exactly. And that's the point. And then we would be very, very well set up here. But even with that said, even just the 2 of us and even my older son, maybe his older daughters, we may possibly have maybe 4 people to set security, which is still not adequate at all.
Tough. Yeah, I mean, you better hope no one knows where you are. Knows where you are if you're only doing 4, right?
Yep.
You need like 9. You need more than that probably. But just the turnover of time and effort and how bored people get, right? If you're going to pull shift, you can't make it so darn long. If your concern and worry there is that someone's going to come and try and take what you've built, then you got to have the people to do it. It could be very difficult with just a small group.
Yeah, and that's maybe a video upcoming soon. You know, I'll talk about security. That's kind of my forte and my strength. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Mr. K, for the assistance and your knowledge. Have a wonderful day and blessings to you and yours.